From Kern Government Television, welcome to this week's Kern County Board of Supervisors meeting, originating from the County Administrative Center located at 1115 Truxtun Avenue, Bakersfield, California. Kern County's vision is to create and maintain a customer-centered county government designed to garner the confidence, support, and trust of the people we serve. Today's Kern County Board of Supervisors meeting will convene momentarily.
You good? Good morning, everyone. We're going to proceed. So the board will please reconvene. Madam Clerk, would you please call the roll?
Supervisor Gleason?
Here.
Supervisor Scribner? Supervisor Maggard?
Here.
Supervisor Couch?
Here.
Supervisor Perez?
Here.
Thank you. We're going to be led in the flag salute this morning by retired Captain Mick Gleason from the United States Navy.
Salute. Pledge.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Please have a seat. We are very pleased that you're here this morning. We have a concern about homelessness that I am certain that you share with us, and we are very much looking forward to hearing some input from you, as well as some presentations from our staff about some of the things that have been discovered and some ideas that are being pursued. So we will get to that in just a moment. We're going to hold public presentations, comments from the public about matters that are not otherwise on our agenda till the end of our meeting this morning. So let's go ahead and now turn to members of the board. Do any members of the board have any comments or discussion items you'd like to have with anybody before we
Mr. Chairman, I would just like to take a moment to commend the Kern County Fire Department for their outstanding job the past couple of weeks and what they've done throughout the state of California.
Yeah, very good. Any others? Then let's go ahead and move to our first. We're going to hear a report from the CAO's office and a response to a July 10 referral regarding homelessness in Kern County. We're going to start, I believe, by hearing from Jose Gonzalez.
Good morning. Thank you, Chairman Maggard and members of the board. The purpose of this special meeting on homelessness is to provide your board with an update and ongoing efforts to combat homelessness in Kern County. This presentation will focus on 4 elements. 1, a brief historical overview of homelessness. 2, current statistical figures in Kern County. 3, an update on recent adopted Kern County's plan to end homeless by 2028, presented by members of the Kern County Homeless Collaborative. And 4th, related strategies and homelessness efforts currently engaged by county departments and future goals to address homelessness. I would like to introduce Jessica Jansen, Homeless Project Manager with United Way of Kern County, who will be speaking on the Kern County Homeless Collaborative. And immediately following her presentation, Heather Kimmel, Assistant Executive Director with Kern County Kern County Housing Authority, will speak on Kern County's plan to end homelessness by 2028. Immediately after those presentations, your county department heads and its representatives will provide a brief presentation on county's homelessness challenges, the impact on homelessness, and methods to best address homelessness. Thank you.
Very good.
Chairman Maggard, members of the board, I wanted to start off by thanking you for this opportunity this morning to speak to you about the Kern County Homeless Collaborative. The Kern County Homeless Collaborative believes that homelessness is a solvable social problem and that through collaborative planning and action, we can eventually ensure that every homeless individual and family has safe, affordable housing. Solving homelessness is the morally correct thing to do and will improve the life of the community as a whole. We look forward to the day when homelessness becomes rare, brief, and non-recurring. It's important to note that as we move through this presentation, we're going to be talking about homelessness as defined by the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development. The U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development, or HUD, defines homelessness as an individual or family who lacks a fixed, regular nighttime residence, who sleeps in a place not meant for human habitation, who lives in a supervised temporary shelter, or a homeless person exiting an institution after a temporary period. Also included in HUD's definition of homeless are individuals and families in imminent danger of losing housing, unaccompanied youth under 25, families with children defined as homeless under other federal statutes, and anyone fleeing or attempting to flee domestic violence. We also identify individuals as not just homeless, but as chronically homeless. And chronic homelessness is defined by HUD as someone who has been homeless for at least 1 year or 4 times in the last 3 years, and that individual has a chronic mental or physical disability. We define chronic homelessness because there is a huge focus on a national level on ending chronic homelessness. So now that we know how homelessness is defined, let's look at this issue at a state level. So California accounts for almost 1/3 of the nation's homeless, and in 2017 reported the largest annual increase of 13.7%. And 78% of the state's homeless individuals were counted in unsheltered locations. So if we look at this on a national level using numbers from the 2017 Annual Homeless Assessment Report to Congress, homelessness increased almost 1% nationally. But if you were to take California out of that equation completely, there was actually a decrease nationally of 2.8%. So I think that speaks volumes to what's happening up and down our state right now. But what does that mean for us here locally? Through our 2018 point in time count, or our homeless census, we identified 885 individuals as homeless. That's a 9% increase countywide from 2017, with a 38% increase in unsheltered individuals from 2017. What this shows us is that Kern County is not immune to the crisis that's happening throughout California. So while we're seeing this upward trend of homelessness here locally, I think the question to be answered today is who is working on this issue and what is being done? So quickly, I'll give you an overview and background of the Kern County Homeless Collaborative. The Kern County Homeless Collaborative is made up of 26 agencies and individuals who are dedicated to ending homelessness here in Kern County. The collaborative was founded in 1998 and is a HUD-recognized regional continuum of care. The collaborative is responsible for planning and coordinating housing and services for homeless families and individuals, and there's a current allocation of $5.5 million for housing and supportive services. Membership of the collaborative is diverse. It consists of representatives from government agencies, nonprofits, faith-based groups, advocacy groups, businesses, and current and formerly homeless individuals. The collaborative is organized under a governance charter, which defines its authority, responsibilities, composition, and policies and procedures. There are 8 standing committees that conduct business under the oversight and direction of a governing board. And the Kern County Homeless Collaborative serves the entire geography of Kern County, including incorporated cities and unincorporated areas. The Kern County Homeless Collaborative has many responsibilities, and we'll highlight a few for you here. One of the responsibilities of the collaborative is to consult with recipients of that continuum of care funding and establish performance targets, monitor the performance, evaluate outcomes, and report to HUD as required. The collaborative also establishes and consistently follows written standards for prioritizing that continuum of care assistance, including policies and procedures for evaluating eligibility and determining and prioritizing assistance for multiple types of housing. The Kern County Homeless Collaborative holds meetings of the full membership twice a year in the spring and in the fall. They appoint committees, ad hoc committees, and working groups. They work to expand and maintain the membership of the collaborative by engaging with stakeholders in our community. Another responsibility of the collaborative is to operate and maintain a homeless management information system, or HMIS. HMIS is a computerized data collection tool that's designed to capture client-level information on the characteristics and service needs of persons experiencing homelessness. There are compliance policies associated with HMIS, including plans for privacy, security, and data, and these policies are reviewed annually. Kern Behavioral Health and Recovery Services is the Kern County Homeless Collaborative's HMIS lead agency. The Kern County Homeless Collaborative's governing board is a 16-member board who's been authorized by the voting members to maintain and conduct the work and structure as defined in our governance charter. The governing board conducts hands-on work and facilitates committees and task groups necessary for proper and efficient functioning not only of the Kern County Homeless Collaborative, but as well as the HUD Continuum of Care and Emergency Solutions grant programs. The governing board does meet monthly. Board members are selected to represent various constituencies, and they must be current voting members in good standing. They must demonstrate a high level of ethical behavior and a working knowledge of and compassion around homelessness and homelessness issues. They must be eligible to transact business with federal and local government. And our Kern County Homeless Collaborative board chair and co-chair may not be employees or board members of any agency that receives that continuum of care funding in order to prevent any sort of conflict of interest. There are 8 standing committees that conduct business under the oversight of the governing board, and we'll go through each one now. We have a Continuum of Care Planning and Performance Committee, and that committee is tasked with encouraging participation of the County of Kern and the City of Bakersfield in our efforts to combat homelessness. They monitor the outcomes of projects funded both through the Emergency Solutions Grant and Continuum of Care programs. They participate in preparation of the yearly consolidated and action plans, and they coordinate with our HMIS committee to ensure quality data reporting. Our Coordinated Entry and Assessment Committee plans, implements, facilitates, and monitors our county-wide coordinated entry system. They review those policies annually, and they've built and maintain a standardized by-name list for homeless veterans and chronically homeless individuals. Our HMIS and Data Quality Committee coordinates the Homeless Collaborative's Homeless Management Information System. They facilitate trainings on the system, and they ensure that all of our data collection processes and the quality of our data are in accordance with HUD standards. They review those HMIS policies annually, and they help to recommend best practices on data collection. On data collection, reporting, HIPAA compliance, and security. We have our Homeless Outreach Committee, and they provide regular outreach events for individuals who are not only experiencing homelessness, but who are also at risk for homelessness. They participate in community events, and they build partnerships and networking opportunities so that we can continuously expand the number of people we're able to serve. They also distribute consumer surveys at outreach events that help us identify needs of individuals who are experiencing homelessness, and it helps us maximize the resources already available within our community. We have our Homeless Youth Committee that builds relationships between foster care and youth-serving agencies to prevent discharge into homelessness. They conduct youth-specific outreach events and are currently facilitating focus groups to learn more about the specific needs of our homeless youth. We have our Housing Committee, and I would just like to point out that former Mayor Harvey Hall was the chair of our Housing Committee. The Housing Committee researches best practices, recommends housing solutions, and implements HUD's prioritization standards. They offer assistance when completing the annual housing inventory chart that is reported to HUD. They engage with private and public stakeholders in developing housing projects. They champion our Housing First initiative, and they monitor the development of housing choice vouchers. Our Homeless Prevention and Discharge Planning Committee works with local stakeholders to prevent discharge into homelessness from medical, mental health, incarceration, foster care, and temporary housing. We have our Point and Time Count Committee that plans, designs, and conducts our annual homeless point and time count or homeless census. They recruit volunteers, they develop and provide the training to those volunteers, they compile all the data collected during the count, and submit those findings to HUD and also to our community. And I would also just like to say that our 2019 point in time count is scheduled for January 30th, and we are always looking for volunteers to help us in this effort. We have our SOAR committee, and our SOAR committee uses what's called the SOAR method to efficiently link individuals experiencing homelessness to Social Security benefits. Listed for you here are the 26 agencies of the Kern County Homeless Collaborative who are working tirelessly to prevent and end homelessness in Kern County every day. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Heather Kimmel.
Good morning, Ms. Kimmel.
Good morning. In May of 2008, Kern County developed the first ever strategic plan to address homelessness. This plan was named Home First, Kern County's 10-year plan to end chronic homelessness. The purpose was to redirect and coordinate the efforts of the Homeless Collaborative towards ending chronic homelessness. The blueprint for the original plan included 3 major objectives with numerous goals and strategies to achieve them. Under this plan, the Homeless Collaborative expanded its permanent housing bed inventory by 650%, from 259 beds in 2008 to 2,282 beds in 2017. Although we did see an increase in homelessness between 2017 and 2018, we saw an overall reduction in homelessness between 2007 and 2018 of 42%. The original plan ended in May of 2018, and a new plan had to be developed. This plan took 6 months to develop and was overseen by the 10-year plan working group with input from all 8 homeless collaborative committees, its entire membership, and many partner agencies, private citizens, and stakeholders, including homeless and formerly homeless citizens. Home at Last builds upon the original plan and incorporates 3 new objectives. There are now 6 objectives with a number of component goals, strategies for achieving each goal, and specific action steps to implement the strategies. In the next several slides, you will see detailed information about the objectives and their goals. I will be explaining the objectives, touching on the goals, and highlighting some of our progress and important notes. In the interest of time, you will have the detailed information in the packets provided to you and will also be available online for you to reference back to after the presentation. This is the plan that we are currently working on, and this is what is going to continue our work into the future. Objective 1 is to establish a coordinated entry system. A coordinated entry system is a systematic approach to providing housing resources to the homeless. It ensures that every homeless individual, no matter which agency they access or which door they enter, is assessed for services in the same way. It also ensures that the most vulnerable homeless in our community receive those services first. Goal 1 is to implement all service components as written in the policies and procedures. Our coordinated entry system has been fully operational since April of 2018. This is critical because coordinated entry systems are HUD mandated. They're required in order for us to continue receiving federal, state, and local homeless funding. Goal 2 is to conduct countywide marketing of the coordinated entry system. Marketing strategies have begun, and we began to launch our full marketing campaign in January. Goal 3 is to implement the data management components. We have a new HMIS vendor that has been selected, and data management will be fully integrated into the system by January as well. Goal 4 is to support continued financial operation and expansion of the coordinated entry system. Our current system is being operated by a collaboration of partner agencies through in-kind services. They are doing this work with current funding and current staffing. We are compliant, and we are ensured that we're eligible for future funding. However, to be sustainable long-term, we need a dedicated funding source for this. Community Action Partnership of Kern has agreed to be the lead agency for the coordinated entry system in our community. We are going to be submitting our first application to HUD for funding in September. Objective 2 is to prevent homelessness and repeated homelessness whenever possible. Goal 1 is to reduce the number of people who return to homelessness. All supportive services are provided to homeless individuals once they're housed for up to 3 years or longer if necessary. Before an individual is graduated from case management, they're informed about how to access the coordinated entry system again in the future if a new housing crisis arises. This ensures that we can provide services and intervene before they fall all the way into homelessness. Goal 2 is to reduce the number of people who become homeless for the first time. Homeless prevention is a critical component to ending homelessness in your community. We identify that this is an area we need to develop resources in, and we are currently seeking funding opportunities. Goal 3 is to reduce the number of inmates who are discharged into homelessness. We are currently setting up an outreach program with correctional staff, Kern Behavioral Health Recovery Services jail team staff, and VA Justice outreach staff. Outreach is scheduled to begin in December. Once we've established outreach, we will formalize the process and protocols through memorandums of understanding. Additionally, we will continue to support Greater Bakersfield Legal Assistance and their homeless court program to advocate for diversion in lieu of jail for lesser crimes where treatment or housing services are indicated. Goal 4 is to reduce the number of hospital patients who are discharged into homelessness. We are currently setting up outreach programs with local hospitals to begin working with patients prior to their discharge. Outreach is scheduled to begin in December, and just like the previous goal, we will be formalizing these processes through memorandums of understanding. In addition, we are actively working with hospitals to increase respite care beds, and we anticipate program expansion by September. Goal 5 is to reduce the number of youth who become homeless. We are actively training child probation officers, child protective services staff, foster parents, and school counselors on how to access the coordinated entry system. We will then create an outreach program to locate homeless and runaway youth. And finally, we will identify agencies willing and able to apply for federal funds to expand on these programs. Through Objective 2, we have already strengthened partnerships to allow for full integration of homeless services. We are now collaborating at a level never before seen. Of those placed in housing programs, 95% remain housed. The national average is 80%. For the first time ever, we have data about persons at risk of homelessness. We are currently looking at this data to understand determinants of homelessness. This data will be used to support future funding. Objective 3 is to improve the economic security, health, and stability of homeless and at-risk people. Goal 1, increase the amount of income received from public benefits. We are working with case managers to increase their skills in benefit counseling. This will expedite the application process and increase positive outcomes for our clients. Goal 2 is to increase the amount of employment income earned. The Bakersfield Homeless Center has done a fantastic job through a bridge employment program. They continue to expand, recently executing contracts in the private sector. This program has been recognized on a national level and is being duplicated in many areas across the state. Goal 3 is to ensure that all homeless clients have medical insurance coverage and have access to primary health and dental care. We have established an agreement with Kern Medical's Whole Person Care Project. The Whole Person Care Program serves those who are homeless or at risk of homelessness, who are Medi-Cal recipients, and are high utilizers of emergency services. When enrolled in the program, they are assigned a care coordinator who links them to housing navigation services, employment and training services, and education on medical benefits. To ensure rapid access to this program, the Kern County Homeless Collaborative developed a reverse referral system. It has been so effective that it's being looked to as a best practice in the state. Goal 4 is to ensure that mental health and substance abuse treatment services are available. We will continue to collaborate with Kern Behavioral Health and Recovery Services to increase accessibility to the homeless population. We will also work to create no-charge recovery home beds, and we will train recovery station staff in how to access the coordinated entry system once those programs open. Goal 5 is to enhance the case management services needed to provide the most effective housing placement, support, and aftercare. We are currently researching case management curricula and certification programs. We're creating common professional standards of practice and are seeking funding to provide these trainings. We anticipate that over the next 10 years, we will need 15 to 20 new case managers. The Homeless Collaborative is in the final stages of executing a contract that will provide additional case management funding and will reduce ratios to no more than 1 to 40. To also increase case management and coordination of care, we are working with Kern Behavioral Health and Recovery Services to transition eligible clients to their case managers for continuing care. Through Objective 3, we have and are developing programs and processes that are being recognized at the national and state levels. Case managers will soon have smaller caseloads and more intensive trainings to help improve these outcomes. Objective 4 is to ensure that emergency shelter, transitional housing, and interim housing beds are adequate to meet current and future demand. Goal 1, publicly support and assist the Bakersfield Homeless Center in transitioning to a new location in response to the California High-Speed Rail Authority's Bullet Train project. The Bullet Train project is scheduled to come right through the existing location, so relocation is imminent. We will advocate on behalf of the Bakersfield Homeless Center until transition is complete, and we will encourage private and public funders to direct necessary resources to the project. This will ensure that there are no gaps in services during this transition. Goal 2 is to ensure that there are sufficient emergency shelter beds to meet the needs of the homeless individuals and families, and that beds are effectively utilized. Currently, both emergency shelters here in Bakersfield run at full occupancy each night. We will begin to look at quarterly occupancy reports to identify any trends. And beginning next month, we will survey unsheltered homeless individuals to identify why they are not or why they have not accessed emergency shelter. We're hoping that this research will show us the need for alternative shelter beds, if any. We also realize that there is an emergency shelter shortage in most of our rural communities, and we are looking to develop a hotel or motel voucher system for these communities. We're currently seeking funding, and once secured, we will recruit owners willing to participate. We will also define specific conditions for their use. Goal 3 is to increase the number of bridge housing beds. Bridge housing is a program in which somebody who has received a housing voucher can immediately be placed into a program, come off of the streets while they look for their forever apartment, or they're trying to secure a lease with a private landlord. This process can sometimes be very lengthy, and we know that if they are in a secure location where it is safe for them, they are more easily able to look for an apartment, and their case manager can work with them in a more expedited way. Over the next 10 years, we will work to develop 25 new bridge housing beds. We currently have 26 beds specifically for veterans and 2 beds that are currently being used for the chronically homeless. We will be submitting our first application to HUD for funding of this program in September. The current progress under these goals will eventually lead us to a robust shelter system countywide. Objective 5 is the most technical of the 6 objectives and will take the most work in developing. Objective 5 is to increase the affordable housing inventory for homeless individuals and families by 10,470 new beds over the next 10 years. Goal 1 is to increase the number of permanent supportive housing beds for homeless people by 8,591 new beds in 10 years. Permanent supportive housing is a program where a homeless individual enters into an apartment, signs a lease with a private landlord, and case management services continue after they are housed. This program type is often offered to the most vulnerable in our community. We will apply for 859 new beds annually. In addition, we have begun advocating for full utilization of a special permanent supportive housing program called HUD-VASH. It's a partnership between HUD and the Department of Veterans Affairs for homeless veterans. We've had utilization challenges in Kern County, and recently Congressman McCarthy, Congressman Valadao, Senator Feinstein, and Senator Harris signed a joint letter to the VA regarding the utilization. From that letter, the VA has committed to reaching 87% utilization by January. That translates to an additional 32 veterans being housed and out of homelessness. Outreach is a critical component to ending homelessness and connecting people to housing resources. We identified that there were not enough outreach workers to effectively engage all homeless persons in our community. Kern Behavioral Health and Recovery Services recently released a request for a proposal to expand its REACH program, which will bring an additional $1.5 million for outreach into our community. We anticipate that this program will begin before the end of the year. Goal 2 is to increase the number of rapid rehousing beds by 1,879 new beds in the next 10 years. Rapid rehousing is a program that assists homeless individuals with security deposit and short-term rental assistance while receiving case management services. This program is typically offered to those who are less vulnerable, as they can stabilize more quickly. We will generate a combined total of 188 new rapid rehousing beds annually. Goal 3 is to acquire, construct, and or renovate 600 new affordable permanent housing beds for homeless families and individuals. We'll work to obtain all possible available federal, state, and local capital funds to develop these units. Goal 4 is to acquire, construct, and or renovate an as yet to be determined number of new No Place Like Home funded permanent supportive housing beds. The No Place Like Home program is for people who have behavioral health issues, who are chronically homeless or at risk of becoming chronically homeless. We will be submitting our first application this fall and will apply for subsequent funding between 2019 and 2024. Goal 5 is to decrease the length of time people remain homeless from point of access until placed into permanent housing to 90 days or less. We've worked to reduce many barriers to entering housing. We now allow clients to receive a voucher and begin the housing search process while obtaining vital documents such as their birth certificate or ID. Case managers now pre-inspect units for habitability prior to submitting a packet to the Housing Authority, which expedites the paperwork process. And we've developed a landlord partnership program to mitigate perceived risk of renting to homeless persons, thus increasing the available housing stock. We have already seen a 5% reduction in the length of time homeless and anticipate this trend to continue. Goal 6 is to promote alternative permanent housing placement options. Case managers currently provide diversion services to people requesting shelter who may be able to stay in their current housing situation, including persons temporarily doubled up or staying with family or friends. We're also in the process of developing an up-to-date list of alternative housing locations. In addition, we're increasing our efforts to recruit landlords willing to rent to homeless persons. Without an adequate stock of housing, it's much harder to find a permanent solution for somebody. We are holding our first annual California Landlord Summit in October, and we've implemented a shared housing program, bringing more options to the table for local landlords. Goal 7 is to support development of new affordable housing units for low and very low-income households. The Kern County Homeless Collaborative is now a member of the newly formed Kern County Affordable Housing Coalition. Through this coalition, we will advocate with developers for set-aside of new affordable apartment units for homeless individuals. Goal 8 is to help 120 formerly homeless households transition from subsidized to unsubsidized housing. This will be done by building capacity in a program called Wise Investment Now to reach financial stability for our clients. We've also partnered with Habitat for Humanity to refer those who are in a position to purchase their own home so that they have access to that program. Increasing affordable housing is the largest component to ending homelessness. Programs that divert people from homelessness, streamline processes for accessing housing, and increase partnerships with landlords and developers have already begun to show positive outcomes in reaching this goal. And lastly, Objective 6 is to broaden and strengthen community support for ending homelessness. Goal 1 is to utilize client data from the HMIS system, the Built for Zero and Functional Zero initiatives, and from other agencies to produce an annual report to inform decision makers of progress. We've begun discussing with local providers to create a field that tracks homelessness in their existing databases. They will be able to share aggregate homeless client data with the Homeless Collaborative on an annual basis. This will be more easily accomplished once the new HMIS vendor comes on board in January. As mentioned on the previous slide, we collect data from the Built for Zero and Functional Zero campaigns. These are campaigns centered around ending veteran and chronic homelessness, and we continue to report monthly to our governing board on those outcomes. Goal 2 is to engage decision-making bodies in ongoing dialogue about solving homelessness. Today marks a huge step in accomplishing this goal. We hope to continue these conversations with individual supervisors and other decision-making bodies. We will make the case for local, public, or private funds to help reduce the impact and cost of homelessness to the community. Goal 3 is to produce professional, nonprofit, public service announcements. We are currently working with communications agencies to produce these PSAs and enlist appropriate persons to appear in them. It's imperative that we keep the public informed as to our progress and provide opportunities to volunteer and help. We are using data to guide our decisions and create impactful plans. This is the roadmap that will lead and has led our decisions. The new plan has been implemented, as I said earlier, since May of 2018. So we've only been under this plan for a few months. We are still in the implementation stage. Committee leadership has been informed of their roles in implementing the plan. Monthly briefings will begin to identify significant steps taken or events or occurrences that may affect the plan. And we will provide annual progress reports to the governing board beginning this February and annually after that. Throughout my presentation, you heard the word ending homelessness several times. But what does it mean to end homelessness? Ending homelessness means that it is rare in our community. That when somebody falls into homelessness, it is brief. And when their homelessness crisis is resolved, it is non-reoccurring. Ending homelessness means that it is rare, brief, and non-reoccurring. We'd like to conclude this portion of our presentation with a quote from former Mayor Hall. He was instrumental in developing the first plan and was a champion of our work. It is my strong belief that every individual and family deserves safe, affordable housing. I know the caring and compassionate people of Bakersfield and Kern County share this goal. It can be achieved through proactive, coordinated action and investments in cost-saving initiatives that solve homelessness. We have the plan. Now the real work begins. I am asking that you please join us now in ending homelessness in our community. We would like to thank you again, Chairman Maggard, members of the board, for the opportunity to share about our collaborative and our new 10-year plan.
Ms. Jansen, Ms. Kimball, those very comprehensive plan. We appreciate very much you bringing that forward to us. It is comforting. It doesn't happen every day when somebody passes away that after their death, their words still have impact and kind of set the tone. And it's really gratifying, I think, that Mayor Hall's words are still kind of ringing in the bell for this. So that's very, very helpful. Colleagues, any questions or comments at this point? Yeah, we have more presentations. Mr. Gonzalez, do you want to introduce the next one, or
Yes.
do we just have Greg Fenton come forward?
Chairman Maggard and members of the board, now you will be hearing from some of your department representatives.
This is Greg Fenton, our Director of Kern County Code Compliance. Good morning, Mr. Fenton.
Good morning, Chairman Maggard, members of the board.
Wait, hold on just a second, okay? There are a number of people standing at the back of the room. We have 20 or 25 seats up front. If you are not wanting to stand, you can come down and work your way into the crowd here if you'd like to have a seat. So, Mr. Fenton, go ahead. Sorry to interrupt you.
Thank you, Chairman. Greg Fenton, Director of Engineering, Surveying, and Permit Services Department. I was asked to come to this presentation to speak as Director of Code Compliance, but the impacts of homelessness affects a lot of different divisions within Public Works, so I'm going to touch a little bit on some of the other aspects of Public Works that it deals with in addition to just code compliance. As you know, code compliance deals with issues on private property, but we also have impacts, primarily illegal dumping and some other stuff in the public ways or on public property that our Operations Division of Public Works will deal with. I guess one of the most obvious impacts that your board deals with on a regular basis from me coming to your board every Tuesday to bring cases forward involves boarding and securing vacant structures. We have numerous buildings throughout the county that are vacant, and so long as they're secured, no harm, no foul. But when they get broken into, that's a violation of many of the ordinances, or one of the ordinances that code compliance deals with on a regular basis. And as you know, I bring those cases to your board regularly. I want to touch on a couple of them just to kind of let the crowd know and remind your board of some of the impacts and some of the costs involved. Again, I'm talking about impacts to Public Works, so I'm not pulling any punches, just going to say it the way it is. Not too long ago, I brought a case before your board on Fraser Avenue here in the Bakersfield area. And the owner, out of the kindness of his heart, had opened up his property to homeless individuals. Code compliance probably responded to no less than 12 cases over a certain period of time from various complaints coming in from the neighbors. I also know that the Sheriff Department responded to that same address multiple times for criminal activity of all sorts. And again, we were out there at least 12 times, and ultimately the building caught fire. But even then, what structure remained in the backyard, the home was still occupied until code compliance was able to get in there and demolish the structure and clean the site. And that was a little bit over $20,000 to take care of that. Unfortunately, that's not a real uncommon chain of events. Vacant buildings, obviously we're not going to board up anything that's not vacant, so when I talk about board and secure, we're dealing with vacant buildings, and how much of it can be attributed to homelessness versus other criminal activity, a little tough to determine, but we have a pretty good feel for some of this stuff. So again, we'll have a case, a vacant building, it's broken into, it's boarded up, it's cleaned up, often trash and debris go along with this activity. It's broken into again, and it catches fire. Not an uncommon trend that we see. Last year, fiscal year 17-18, we processed at least 117 cases involving some type of fire damage. Again, not all attributed to homeless, but certainly some of it is. Supervisor Maggard, you may remember an instance on Magnolia in your district that was constantly being broken into. We had the building red tagged, that is, we posted as occupancy unsafe. There were no utilities. We were in touch with the owner. He was out of town. He was trying to keep it boarded up, but we had repeat and constant break-ins into that structure. The sheriff increased their patrol. The neighbors were watching out for it, but it was almost about every Monday. We had a standing purchase order with a contractor to go out and secure that site just about every week. Finally, the owner took control of it and put an end to that. But it takes time. Boarding Drive was another example of a project, and the vagrants destroyed those buildings to such an extent that we had to demolish all of those structures at that location at a cost of over $24,000. We currently have talked about posting and red tagging a building as uninhabitable. That lets not just the building, people trying to get into the building, but the owners and the sheriff know that that is not to be occupied. It's a big red placard on the front door to try and let them know. That gives the sheriff a little bit more leverage to deal with people that are there. Obviously, they're not supposed to be. We have over 1,000 buildings in Kern County currently red tagged as uninhabitable. Real quick, talking about homeless encampments, another challenge. While some encampments involve structures, a lot of them don't. They may take refuge on private property, county drainage facilities, under bridges, wherever it might be, but we have a different process that we deal with those encampments, because a lot of times those homeless individuals, that's everything they have. All of their possessions they have with them. We provide 72-hour notice. We post the site in 72 hours. We're going to come back and clean this up. And in that time, we'll get contractors lined up. We work closely with flood ministries to try and make contact with the homeless individuals and see if they can come up with some other living or housing arrangements. Some take them up on them, some don't. In 72 hours, we go back to clean the site. We've got our contractors lined up. They might bring roll-offs because we have typically a tremendous amount of trash and debris. But per the county's abandoned property ordinance, we have to catalog and hang on to their possessions for 12 months. That is clearly trash, junk, and debris. That's straightforward, but sometimes it's questionable. We have cooking gear, bicycles, whatever the case may be. We actually had to purchase a storage container that we have at one of our county facilities to retain those possessions for a minimum of 12 months. So we go in, clean all that up, and take care of whatever we need to do. One example, on a private property, again, within the last year or so on Douglas Street, a homeless encampment was set up in some concrete homes that weren't completed. There's no roof, just a few walls, but they were abandoned. The contractor walked away from them. That site was full of trash, junk, debris, graffiti, needles, very unsanitary conditions, and until we demolished those structures at a tune of $25,000, that's finally what it took to move that along. Another example on county property, just probably 2 or 3 years ago, a sump at the end of Mahoney Street was inhabited by a homeless encampment. Again, we did the posting, give them time to vacate the area. Most of them do, not all of them do, so they're there. We have to deal with them when we return in 72 hours. But the fences were cut, the drainage basin was full of trash and debris. It took almost a week to clean up. Again, not all of it's attributed to the homeless, but a lot of it was. We had multiple roll-offs of trash to dispose of, tires, etc. I didn't get a full price on that, but it was tens of thousands of dollars. So in fiscal year 17-18, code compliance spent almost all of its abatement fund, the fund that your board established to clean this stuff up. It's about $500,000. Of that, over $200,000 were just boarding and securing structures. How much is attributed to homeless is difficult to determine, but certainly a fair amount of it. Code compliance handled 164 illegal dumping cases on private property. Cost over $80,000 to clean that up. But Public Works, the operations division dealing with illegal dumping on public property in the right-of-way, then drainage facilities, under bridges, whatever the case may be, on public property, spent over $1 million during last fiscal year. So between Public Works, code compliance, dealing with private property, operations division dealing with cleanups on public property, we're estimating that approximately $1 million can be attributed to impacts due to homelessness. Also, as your board knows, on the private properties, we try and recover that cost. I am constantly bringing cost confirmations to your board, and if they're not paid, we impose a special assessment on their tax bill. But in reality, we recover very little of that. So it is a tremendous impact, but we keep doing what we're doing. Thank you.
Mr. Fenton, thank you. Any questions for Mr. Fenton at this point? While you guys stand by, we may very well have questions for you in a little bit. Next, I believe, is Brett Haney from, and Carl Brewer, both of them, from our General Services Department. Mr. Haney, good morning.
Good morning, Mr. Maggard, Chairman Maggard, members of the board. My name is Brett Haney. I'm a General Service Division Chief, and with me today is Carl Brewer, our GS Manager for Facilities Maintenance. And we're going to talk today about the impact homelessness has in our facilities, namely buildings and parks. As Mr. Fenton talked about, encampments, we don't see large encampments typically, but we do find individuals and groups who have taken up residence in our buildings and our parks. You'll find them in doorways early in the morning seeking shelter. You'll find them in our parking structure here at the building. You'll find them in our park facilities, under shelters, inside restrooms, under trees, and often under tot lots, which is unfortunate for the residents who want to bring their children to the parks. Along with that, obviously, comes a trash and damage that is left behind. Quite often, we'll find a restroom that has been set on fire because they're looking to burn the paper products in order to keep warm, or they'll leave other trash behind, which becomes a public health concern. We may also find folks living in cars near the river on the north side, across from Hart Park, where our rangers constantly encounter folks there. Again, they leave behind large messes of trash or other belongings left behind that we also have to deal with, similar to what Mr. Fenton said. The biggest challenge with this, obviously, is the welcoming nature of what the parks and buildings should be for the public. When a member of the public comes to use one of our facilities, they often can be intimidated not knowing what they're going to be dealing with when they come up to use a building to enjoy one of our parks. Pulling up on for Heritage Park, for example, where our homeless problem is probably one of our worst in one of our parks. You might often find the homeless individuals camped underneath the picnic shelter that is nearby the tot lot, or even on the tot lot. And as a father of young children myself, it certainly would be disturbing to me to pull up wanting to have my kids play and not being able to have them safely enjoy that. The other problem is our parks either have inside them or nearby facilities where young children may gather. They're near schools. In the example of Heritage again, we have a community action partnership Head Start Center. And we met with them in the last few months because they had concerns with individuals using the nearby tables to gather and doing things that were less than savory within eye shot of the children. So we have taken some steps to relocate those tables throughout the park in order to try to push the element away from the eyesight of the young children. but also the mental health and criminal history these folks might have nearby, and I'll let the sheriff and public health and behavioral health talk more about those things, but those are obviously concerns that we have for the public when encountering these individuals in the park. Vandalism is another problem. I mentioned the paper products being set on fire in the restrooms. Sometimes they take up residency in the restrooms, which makes the restroom unavailable to the public who wants to use them. They also trash the restroom and make them unsightly, and we do our best to try to keep up with keeping them clean. But with public health concerns with some of these individuals, even our best efforts sometimes are not met quickly. And again, people trying to use those restrooms are less inclined to do so. They may also steal copper wiring or copper pipe out of our restrooms or our ball field lights, making them unavailable for a time until they're able to be repaired. They turn those things in for recycled for money to try to sustain their life. Also occasionally have break-ins. We had vehicle break-ins here at our parking structure within the last couple of weeks. Again, it just becomes a cost to the county to have to recover. And finally, I won't get into a lot of details with public health, but excuse me, the trash that's left behind, as they go through the trash to maybe look for recyclables, we can attract pests that are coming to now go through the trash that's left on the ground, additional public health concern there, plus the higher risk for needle sticks and other dangers that things may be left behind. With that, I'm going to turn it over to Carl Brewer, who's going to talk about staff impacts and costs.
Morning, Mr. Brewer.
Good morning, Supervisors. As Brett mentioned, my name is Carl Brewer, and I oversee the park's maintenance and operation and facilities maintenance and operation. I just wanted to touch on a few impacts that homelessness has from just a staff and operational point of view. Regarding safety, there's increased need for personal protective equipment just to reduce the exposure of any diseases, parasites, or bloodborne pathogens. When we're cleaning up homeless encampments, we have to wear Tyvek suits and special types of gloves just to prevent any spread of disease. Also, we're moving forward with sharps containers on all of our county vehicles, so we're gonna have to do specialized training to deal with the hypodermic needle abatement. So like I said, all that requires specialized training. There's also physical risk that staff has interacting with the homeless population. So if you're working on a project, you just got to make sure you're super aware of your surroundings. And in the past, there has been issues with violence, or threats of violence anyway. The encampments also create obstacles for our staff when trying to perform routine maintenance. So if you're trying to clean or maintain a restroom and it's a single occupancy, we'll have homeless lock themselves inside and just makes it harder. Also, there's encampments under trees, which makes it difficult for mowing and watering. Just over the past 6 months, General Services spent about $112,000 related to vandalism, and there's a good portion of that that could be attributed to the homeless population. Lastly, there's like mitigation costs. So we spend money on special security fencing and gating, as well as lighting, just to reduce any security risks from the homeless. So, and if you guys have any questions, I'm available to answer them. Thank you.
One more thing for us is one of the ways that we're trying to mitigate some of these concerns. Carl mentioned, lighting and security, but we do have the Kern County Rangers under our purview in General Services, and when they are on staff, they are making great efforts to go out and try to invite these individuals to leave when they are causing a problem. Quite often they are back the next day, or somebody else moves in their place, and then oftentimes it may be we encounter this when they're off duty. So we rely on the Sheriff's Department and the Bakersfield Police Department to assist us in these efforts. Unfortunately, with their limited resources and their large dossier of more egregious crimes, it could be long lead times in order to deal with asking the homeless individuals to leave our park. So it is a staff and safety concern when having to deal with a lot of these things, but it's something that we are working every day to try to better mitigate those impacts. So again, as Carl said, we have made great strides in order to try to deal with it, but if we have any questions, we're happy to answer them.
I have one observation for you, Mr. Haney. The many county residents are not served by county parks. They are served by other districts. In Arvin, Lamont, there are districts out there. There's a north of the river Parks and Recreation District. So they have their own autonomous staff that deals with things. And one of the problems we have in some of the parks in Whaledale is that park rangers go home at 5 o'clock and nobody's there to make sure at nighttime at 10 o'clock at night when the homeless roll up under the slide and the swing set to house their tents. So being creative about that, that's something we're going to come back and talk to you about, and coordinating that with our colleagues. Nobody's being derelict or irresponsible. This is swamping everybody. So I just wanted to let you know we'll come back and talk to you about that some more.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions for these two? Okay, next is James Morrison, who's commander from the Kern County Sheriff's Department. Good morning, Commander.
Morning. Supervisor Maggard, members of the board. James Morrison wasn't able to make it, and I'm Damian Nord.
Sorry,
We all look alike, sir.
Yeah.
So I'm just going to speak very briefly today of some of our larger problem areas that we get called to on a regular basis, and then ultimately how we respond when it is a clear issue of homelessness. And some of the larger issue areas are Riverview Park, Chester Avenue Corridor, Roberts Lane and Chester Avenue is a big one. China Grade Loop at North Chester Avenue is another one. 1305 Sterling Road, which is a reg-tagged residence, and Veterans Park. And those are all obviously in the metropolitan area. This is not an exhaustive list, but these are just where we get more calls than not when it comes to the homeless issue. When deputies do respond and there is not a crime taking place and it is a clear homeless issue, we do provide them resource information regarding services for the homeless. We do work with the Homeless Collaborative, the public and local businesses to discuss short and long-term goals related to homelessness. Some of the issues we face are when we come into contact with them, a lot of times we're told they don't want help, because we do provide them resources and we do work with some of the ministries and other associations in Kern County. And we are either told they don't want help, they're okay being homeless, or they ask if it's a sober living. And if when it is sober living, they decline. Then they don't want help. So those are some of the issues that we face when it comes to dealing with them. That's all I have today, sir.
I appreciate very much your diligent work with me in the North Chester area. That's proven to be very helpful, but it's a daunting task, isn't it?
Yes, sir.
Yes.
It's ongoing.
Yeah, thank you very much. Next is Matt Constantine, our Director of Public Health. Apparently our department heads all look alike too.
Yes, sir. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. As you can understand, homelessness can provide significant health challenges to an individual and also to our community. The absence of a safe and secure place of residence and the oftentimes associated difficulty in obtaining enough food to eat and healthy food, healthy nutritious meals, and the lack of adequate sleep can regularly impact the health of a person. Your body's natural immune system becomes weakened, and you're much more susceptible to disease and infectious disease and infections, and it delays your body's ability to heal. A homeless individual that has a communicable disease ranging from the flu to perhaps a foodborne illness like hepatitis to a sexually transmitted disease also presents a unique challenge for public health. Surveillance and treatment, which oftentimes requires multiple courses of medications, becomes exceedingly difficult for someone that does not have an address and a place that we can routinely locate the individual. The treatment for tuberculosis, for example, requires the individual to take daily courses of medication for up to 9 months at times. Failing to obtain refills, for this medication, and the failure to take the medication daily can obviously impact the health of the individual, but also allows for that disease to be communicated to somebody else. The California Department of Public Health actually provides money to us in Kern to help secure stable housing for those with HIV and TB so that we can better manage their illness. Currently, we are providing housing assistance to 20 of these individuals, and we typically provide emergency housing for several patients per year. As you will remember, California and a number of states experienced an unprecedented hepatitis A outbreak in late 2016 and going into 2017 that was almost completely centered around the homeless population. Hepatitis A is transmitted from one infected person to another after using the restroom and not being able to wash your hands. And as you can imagine, a homeless individual does not have easy access to restrooms nor an ability to wash their hands routinely. This outbreak was initially focused in San Diego County in late November of 16 and spread to Santa Cruz, Los Angeles, and Monterey counties. California had 704 cases, 461 hospitalizations, and 21 people that died from hepatitis A, all centered in the homeless population. That's unprecedented. We normally have only a few cases, and normally we don't have deaths associated with hepatitis A. In late 2017, the governor declared a state of emergency specifically for the purpose of increasing vaccine supplies for hepatitis A in California. Because of this experience in Kern County, we immediately met with all the organizations that assist with the homeless issue and implemented more stringent cleaning methods and more frequent hand washings for everybody. To this date, we are lucky to say that we have not had any hepatitis A cases associated with homelessness. So due to this concern regarding communicable disease, public health has a team of medical investigators that spend a majority of their time trying to locate homeless individuals with reported communicable diseases and then to obtain treatment or even provide treatment in the field. We have nurses routinely at the Bakersfield Homeless Center, the Dream Center for Homeless Youth, and at a number of churches and other informal locations in the sole effort to try to help the health of the homeless. Mr. Chairman, that concludes my comments.
Mr. Constantine, I'd like to ask you just a couple questions about just how unhealthy it is. I have been involved in cleaning up homeless encampments in my district. There's a grave concern about the general public walking up and grabbing the mattresses and throwing them in a dumpster in the back of their pickup and taking to the dump. There are needles oftentimes embedded in those. That's how they, a common way to dispose of needles is to put them in the seams of those. The bed bugs, all kinds of communicable diseases are there that people are exposed to. One of the concerns I've read about, I've read some information about what's happening in Los Angeles County. There's some concern there about cholera, where there are concentrations of people. Many of these encampments are in the midst of the Kern River, which eventually becomes our drinking water. There's many concerns about this. So how, one of my, we'll come back at the end and have some ideas, but one of my concerns has to do with just at what point can we not tolerate the threat to public health any longer, so we are forced to take action. So as we move forward, I'd be interested in your thoughts and research on is there a line, and when we reach that point, what mandatory, compulsory compliance can we make sure happens to stop the public from being threatened by this? So that'll be something I'll look to you for some answers on. Thank you. Thank you. Anybody else have any questions for Mr. Constantine? Okay, next is, Matt, is Michelle Corson not gonna, she's not part of it? Okay. Next is Dina Murphy, our Director of Kern County Department of Human Services. Good morning, Ms. Murphy.
Good morning, Chairman Maggard, members of the board. Thank you for this opportunity to share some of how we're involved with the homelessness efforts in our community. I'd first like to recognize Mark McAllister. He's in the crowd out here. If he'd stand up and wave. He's our Assistant Director over Employment and Financial Services, who is heavily involved in the homeless assistance programs provided by our agency. He represents DHS as a board member for the Home Homeless Collaborative. He co-chairs the Homeless Prevention and Discharge Planning Committee. He serves as a member of the Coordinated Entry and Assessment Committee. So you see him when the code compliance is called and there are homeless issues, he's on site. So thank you, Mark. I'd also like for Mary Mocampo to stand up and wave. She is our Child Protective Services Human Service Program Specialist stationed at the Dream Center and is representative on the Kern County Collaborative Homeless Youth Committee. So you see the intertwining there. Just want to discuss quickly what our agency does. We administer 4 homeless programs through our Employment and Financial Services Bureau. They are the CalWORKS Homeless Assistance Program, the Housing Support Program, the Welfare to Work Family Stabilization Program, and the Homeless Disability Advocacy Program. Our longest administered program for about more than 25 years now is the CalWORKS Homeless Assistance Program. And it is dual in its efforts. The first piece to that is transitional housing, which offers an opportunity for the homeless individual to have a hotel room for up to 16 days while they're seeking permanent assistance with permanent placement. So the second piece of that is the permanent housing. And with that in mind, we move the client on and pay for their security deposit and helping them move, and they are eligible for that every 12 months unless there are some eligibility criteria that possibly makes them eligible for that as an exception in a shorter time period. In fiscal year 17-18, we assisted 2,195 families through this program, expending $2.1 million. Another CalWORKS funded program is the Housing Support Program. That's administered by the Bakersfield Homeless Center through a contract with Department of Human Services. There are 3 Bakersfield Homeless Center case managers co-located within our building, so we stand poised to assist the individuals walking through the door who are eligible for those services. That program was implemented in January of 2016, and the services for that include utility arrearages, application and credit check fees, security deposit, permanent housing, multiple months of rental assistance based on each client's unique criteria, moving costs. Also with that comes intensive case management services. So there's the housing and stability assessment that takes place with the individual, a client budget review, and we work with them on money and wise money spending and budgeting, housing searching assistance and placement, landlord advocacy to make sure that if they're placed and if we take care of the arrearages, et cetera, that they can continue to stay there. We're not just paying and having them get the boot. Referrals for credit repair, again, the budgeting classes, renters' right classes, 6 months of aftercare case management to try to buoy the family and strengthen them so that they move forward and use this as a springboard not to encounter homelessness again. Referrals to community partners for food banks, clothing, housing items. In fiscal year 2017-18, we housed 154 families through this program, expending $663,000. The third program is the Welfare to Work Family Stabilization, which is also CalWORKS funded. I say that to you so that you know there's not county general fund in this, which is also CalWORK funded. Clients receive 6 months of intensive case management services, including financial assistance and much of what I said to you before, the arrearages for utilities, up to 3 months in rent arrearages. These are all slightly different programs, and it depends on what the client qualifies for. Again, there are credit check fees with this one. There are 10 days of hotel assistance in this, and that is after the 16 days that they're eligible for with the transitional housing dollars. So sometimes we can couple monies if it's taking longer to find stable housing. Security deposits, first month's rents, moving costs, refrigerator and small housing items. We also have housing choice voucher programs that provide permanent subsidized housing through the Housing Authority of Kern County. And this also includes assistance with first month's rent and deposit. In 2017-18, we housed 210 families through this program, expending $212,000. And then our fourth program is the Homeless Disability Advocacy Program. This is new. It began in May of 2018, and we're contracting with, it's really, the program provides rental assistance to disabled individuals. And we're contracting with Flood Ministries to provide the housing and financial assistance, along with our contracting with GBLA to help those clients who are disabled navigate the system and get onto disability application submission process and secure that. Those are formal programs. We also, we were visited by Beth Kluwer in the fall of 2016, and she really, without financial means behind her, everything was private, not government assistance, but worked with the community down at the pit and served dinner every Tuesday night. This is an ongoing effort. It's with Lyft. I don't think Beth is working with them. She's doing some other angelic thing at this point in time. But I want to tell you that she, for years, 8, 9 years, and we started in January of 2017, accompanying them every Tuesday night and then being at the showers on Thursdays so that we could get out into the community and meet the population on a different level, establish relationships, and see where we could help people and lift them from whatever they had encountered or whatever that had happened to them that had brought them to this existence in their life. So that was just an outside effort, and I'm sure probably many of the angels behind me are folks with funding that they've drummed up, and it's their passion that they're working to alleviate some of the hurt that's happening out in the community in this homeless effort. And then I briefly wanted to touch just about the homelessness clients in Kern County related to resources in child welfare, because that's a little different avenue. And I want to preface that by saying that we don't remove children from parents because they're homeless, if that's the only factor. And we don't remove children from parents with mental health or substance abuse issues if that's the only factor. It would need to cause an impairment in their ability to care for their child, to give them shelter, clothing, food, etc., and then we would move in and remove. So these comments that I'm going to make to you are really about when we receive an ER referral on a child and there are risk factors related to homelessness, we have the ability to swoop in and provide some services to help that family not become homeless or to lift them out of homelessness with what we call building family funds, and we've had those since 2008, and we're able to help with rent and deposit, to provide diapers, clothes, anything the family needs that they're lacking that would assist them in staying together as a family. Again, no abuse or neglect, just they've run on tough times, the bills have piled up, they're at threat of losing their home, and we can address issues with their water, their PG&E, if the child doesn't have a bed or if their refrigerator has gone out, things like that, and also advocating for them with a landlord. And if we run into domestic violence issues related to people we're encountering in that realm, we have DV advocates on site at our building. We connect them with the Family Justice Center One Stop and DV shelters throughout Kern County if they must leave right away. And then we can help them aside later with family reunification project dollars, which have been in place since 2009, and that allows for housing department vouchers. So some people who pick up and leave with only the clothes on their back, it's because of DV, and we can help them in a different way so that they are not homeless and safe with their children. I mentioned 2 programs in employment financial services, and our child welfare folks work with those families to see if they're eligible for family stabilization or for welfare to work and get them involved with that, because those dollars have no county general fund in them, and if they qualify, we try to utilize those dollars first. We also have dollars through child abuse prevention, intervention, and treatment. We've had those in place since 2013. We utilize those funds in tandem with the Building Family Funds, and we also partner with the Kern County Network for Children and Differential Response with those dollars. So they go in before someone becomes known to the system. There's been a referral, but it doesn't elevate to that of being abuse or neglect, and they go in with the social workers and try to alleviate the family's risk factors or their potential of becoming homeless right at the front end before the threat of the children coming into the system exists. So an incredible preventative service. And we have been contracting with Differential Response and Network for Children since 2007. They've been very involved with us, incredibly so, in the child welfare arm of the department. We also began to use Differential Response for people who were at greater risk in CalWorks program 2 years ago, but to try to resolve sanctions to buoy the family to ensure that they were able to remain in their households and work with them on securing and then retaining employment, which I believe has been very strength-based in a preventative service for homelessness. The other thing that I wanted to say about the Kern County Network for Children and Youth is that we have had the Dream Center since 2008. We cut a ribbon 18 months ago on a much better and newer Dream Center where we have co-located with our public health nurses, our behavioral health partners, probation, of course, Department of Human Services has totally co-located all of their youth services. Kern County Superintendent of Schools, ETR is providing job services, but you have everyone on site there for those foster youth and former foster youth, trying to eliminate issues related to hunger, joblessness, homelessness. They are there constantly and with all kinds of, special opportunities for the children, even beyond what government funding can do, because there's such an outpouring from the community to make sure that the kids aren't without. And they serve the children up to 25, and if they really need it, they sneak them in older. So they really are incredible. And through the department, where we used to only be able to fund and keep children housed up to age 18, several years ago, AB 12 came into place, which allowed the children to be fully funded and stay in their home environments to age 21. So that's just a snapshot of some of the things that we're doing with at the Department of Human Services, and we're only one of the many partners at the collaborative working on these efforts, but we appreciate you giving us the opportunity to highlight this and maybe educate for some of those folks that may need to use this in a different way. Thank you, and I'll remain available if you have questions.
Thank you, Ms. Murphy. Any questions or comments for her? Next, we have Bill Walker, who is our Director of Kern Behavioral Health and Recovery Systems. Good morning, Mr. Walker.
Good morning, Chairman, members of the board, Mr. Alsop. I'd like to start first because it's been about an hour and 20 minutes, so I'm going to wake the crowd up a little bit. If you are a member of the collaborative, would you please stand? Okay, if you are a member of a church group that's here representing good work that you do through your churches for the homeless, would you please stand? If you're a member of an agency or a department in the county or any of the cities, would you please stand? If you're a concerned public entity, just a person of the public that's concerned about homelessness, would you please stand? Yes. So we serve you, by the way, the last group that stood up. And I want to publicly thank all of you, and I want to publicly thank the board for calling this meeting. And now hopefully you've got more blood flowing through you, so when I speak, you'll hear me. Thank you.
He doesn't want you to fall asleep.
Yeah. That's an old therapist trick. So let me start by saying just a few off-the-cuff remarks. The first one is we're going to need a bigger boat. No matter how good everything we've said is, we need a bigger boat. We need money to flow from places money comes from in the state and federal governments. Number two, we had a presentation a couple of months or so ago, and one of the things that was said is that it's cheaper to house the homeless than to allow them to stay on the street, however that goes. And when I listened to the different entities, and we didn't have EMS come up, we didn't have hospitals come up with emergency rooms, just the cost of homelessness. It's actually cheaper to even allow someone to be on drugs someplace safely than some of the environments that people are in. And I can't remember the exact number, so I'm looking to my left here. Is it, how many outreaches? 14? So to outreach to somebody who's homeless, to get them to accept services, that's if you have them, is 14. So who outreaches to them? Well, people. And that's the most expensive cost of any business generally is the people. You can't do it with a drone. You can't do it with anything but people. So what I'm going to talk to this morning is just two aspects of homelessness. The first aspect of homelessness that I'm going to talk to is how it relates to the clients that we serve. Kern Behavioral Health and Recovery Services in a given year serves about 35,000 people in our mental health and substance abuse systems. So I'm going to talk about what's our relationship to those clients. And then the second group I'm going to talk about is really the street homeless, the chronically homeless, the one that most of us, when we think of homeless in the encampments, it's that group. That's the group we usually think about. The group that wasn't there 5 years ago but now is in front of your business, or when I walk in the northeast side out in the scrub with my dog, I carry pepper spray because I never know if I'm going to run into a homeless encampment and their dogs come after us, kind of group. So the role of Kern BHRS with the first group, which is our clients. We are your behavioral health, which is a mental health and substance abuse plan for those with Medi-Cal or no money. That's what we are for this county. Every county has these plans, and it's funded through state and federal dollars. As I said, we serve about 35,000 people at any given time. And in serving them, what kind of services do we have to help them with their housing? Well, first and foremost, we have crisis services. Most people have heard about a mobile evaluation team that can be called out by law enforcement when they don't want to arrest somebody, but they think there's something else they want to have addressed for mental health or substance use. They can call out our mobile teams. Second, we have our psychiatric evaluation center at Mary Kay Shell. Most people know of that center. We average over 600 people a month coming into that crisis center. We put a second center in there in the same building that averages over 250 people a month. And our hotline averages over 10,000 calls a month. We also handle the long-term care needs. And generally, these are the people who have been pulled. They've been so mentally ill that when we get a hold of them, they need to be in a place like a state hospital or something like that. It's very expensive, and we don't keep a whole lot of people there, but we do house people in long-term care facilities. But the bread and butter of what we do, the 35,000 people, is outpatient services. So if you're in outpatient services, we all get outpatient services. We go see a doctor, we see a dentist. It's outpatient. So where do we go afterwards? Well, we go home. So where's home to our clients? We currently fund or coordinate the funding for over 1,000 different types of housing beds in Kern County. These are your sober living environments. These are your room and boards. These are your board and cares. These are other types of supported living environments. And we also use emergency short-term housing vouchers. We've heard of the vouchers where you find somebody, you don't have a place, but you can voucher them into a hotel or something like that. But the most important place for us is to try to find a home for that person, often with a loved one. There's no way with 35,000 people that they're all homeless. Most of them actually do have a home. So what about the, and we're doing just a few things we're adding to this. One of them is we did, if you remember a couple years ago, there was some concern about sober living environments being in good, reputable condition. And so we developed a quality standards program that now incentivizes people who have a home that does not require a certification, that they hold some kind of a standard if they're going to have our clients living there. We also developed recently a conditional grant program that offers, if a home is willing to set up the ability to be a room and board or board and care, that we'll give them up to $10,000 to beautify or somehow make that the right kind of environment for the individuals, because the payment that they receive generally is pretty low. We also recently started a program called PAC for Recovery. So if people are coming out of jail or hospitals or places that are often vulnerable to homelessness, that they would have a care package of the essentials that they may need. And sometimes it's just having a few things that gets you from point A to point B. So for our clients, that first group, everyone gets some kind of a case manager or coordinator. And for many of our clients, they also get what they call a peer navigator, which is someone of lived experience. If you think of AA, probably the biggest peer navigation system on the face of the earth. It's just taking someone with lived experience and connecting them with somebody. So we have that kind of wraparound approach so that the bulk of the people who are getting our services are not homeless. And I so appreciate law enforcement getting up and saying, but when you offer now I'm going to go into the second definition. Often the biggest difficulty is when you offer services to people on the street, it's not easy to get them to engage. So let's talk for a second about the chronic homeless and the street homeless. How'd we get here? Well, there's a lot of good information on how we got here, so I'm just going to hit a couple of the points. Obviously, in much of California, a friend of mine said, I'm retiring and I have a family member who's up by San Francisco, so I looked at rent in San Francisco. Anybody look at rent in San Francisco recently? Single bedroom apartment for over $3,000 a month. But part of you says, well, wait a minute, Bill, we have the third largest county at over 8,000 square miles, and although it's still expensive to live anywhere, it's not nearly as expensive here, but we have the same problem. So why is that? Well, obviously there's bad choices. There are different things that impact it, but I want to bring another component to it, which is there used to be a prop called Prop 36, and Prop 36 allowed someone to be arrested and through the adjudication of that arrest be offered court-ordered substance abuse treatment as an option. And the carrot of being court-ordered meant you got to go, well, we have a housing plan for you if you don't go. It's called incarceration. And research has shown that when people are so down that they're doing things that damage themselves, that making them get help sometimes is the only way. And that proposition is no longer in force. Now add to that Prop 47. Prop 47 reduced the criminalization of substance use. And although, people think of people like me, I'm a therapist, I'm head of the recovery system, it's in our title, that wouldn't I be liberal and say, isn't that great? Not so great, because what it did is it meant law enforcement now, if someone is under the influence on the street, but they're not committing a crime, it's a ticket. It's a ticket that they probably won't show up to court for, though the cop might have to, if he writes the ticket. And so what we've seen is that we have literally handcuffed our own law enforcement agencies that were actually a big part of helping people who were using substances get into treatment. And so, spoiler alert, at the end of this, what I'm going to talk about is also how do we change legislation? How do we, anybody can get behind a movement of legislation. And so how do we look at legislation as one of the arms for our county and for our state? So our role with the street homeless is the following. First off, we are active with the collaborative, very supportive of the collaborative. A lot of counties don't have a collaborative. There's something you don't like about the collaborative, go tell them. Go leverage them. Go make them be greater than they've ever been, because we need them like you just can't believe how much we need this collaborative. And we are so lucky that we have a county that already has one. So what we really want to do is invest in that house, literally, and then use that across all the county and all the cities. Number two, we actually have active homeless outreach through our Kern Linkage program right now. We work with people coming out of the jail. One is called the Homeless Outreach Team. And the other one is a jail release program, because these are at-risk populations. We recently opened last year a crisis stabilization unit, which will also be a sobering station on the east side in Ridgecrest. And it shares the grounds with Ridgecrest Regional Hospitals, because quite often those individuals need, as public health said, they're often very fragile, and so they need medical care. And so we're sharing those grounds. And so we now have 2 anchors of emergency service on both sides of the county. It was mentioned in the slides, our REACH program. I'm really excited about this, because what we did is we took a commitment of millions of dollars over time, starting off with $1.5 million, because what's the most expensive thing? It's the staff, right? Having feet on the street. Nothing's more expensive than that. So this money, which went through an RFP, which is just the way the government requires us to give the money, will go to probably some of the entities behind me to put 15 to 20 people in Bakersfield, 15 to 20 people on the street. So when you hear things like the coordinated entry system and stuff, well, who's going to do that? Well, there's already groups doing it. There's not enough. We're going to increase that by up to 20 people. And we are county-wide requirement. And so for my department, every one of our contracted services areas, Delano, Ridgecrest, Fraser Park, Tehachapi, Kern River Valley, Mojave, just keep going, Roseman, they will get an allotment of REACH funds to add some staffing to their staff. And these dollars, and it took some money, it took some effort to get this, what this will give us is the ability to street outreach directly to those individuals and then get them connected to whatever sources, including our resources. We also recently were approved to launch something called the Healing Project. The Healing Project is developing 2 different entities which are really what you call a sobering station. So someone gets brought into the emergency room, or law enforcement finds them, or one of the REACH staff or one of our agency staff says, this person is under the influence. Where do you go when you're under the influence? It's funny. I used to tell our substance abuse director, you treat people who aren't using drugs that want to stay off drugs. I ran the crisis division. I ran the emergency services. I said, I treat people under the influence. There's a difference. These are houses, these are places to treat people who are under the influence. So someone could be brought there. They may need to go to a hospital to get a medical clearance, or they may be coming from a hospital. But to open one of these up, the one that we're opening will have things like even a little kennel, because sometimes they're not going to accept services because they're not going to leave the street without their dog going with them. And so these 2 sobering stations will allow people to come in for up to 23 hours for us to try to stabilize enough to then get them connected through the other resources like the coordinated entry system and into beds. Last but not least, there's a lot of new money coming out on 2 different areas. One is the opioid crisis, which we really didn't talk about, although when people talk about needles and stuff, we're not talking aspirin, we're talking opioids. And so there's a lot of money there, and then there's also a lot of money in housing right now. And these aren't quick fixes, but our department, and I know it's been alluded to, that different groups are looking. I'm sure Supervisor Perez through CSAC, there's conversations about how to allocate these dollars, how to get them to the, yes. We need to get these dollars because we need a bigger boat. And my last comments really is about legislation. I co-chair the legislative committee for our state organization. And I know there's a lot of look in LA County that has a horrendous homeless on how to even look at conservatorship laws or other laws. So when someone is really that distraught, how to get them off the street, even if it's against their will. And so my final summary is that, one, I'm very thankful that you're having this event, that I know it's just an event to be a pivot point, and I'm appreciative of that. I'm appreciative of all the people behind me and how full this place is, where people had to look to find a place to sit. I wanted to give you 2 definitions of how we work both with our clients and the street or chronically homeless, and that it's very important that the public hear that it's not just that we're thinking about it, but that we're actually doing things with our 1,000 beds and with our sobering stations and with our REACH program and with all the other entities who have reported. Thank you, and I'm available for any questions.
Hold on just a second, Mr. Walker. Supervisor Perez.
Thank you, Chairman. Bill, thank you for your presentation. You struck a personal chord with me when you talked about Prop 36 court, because as a public defender, I spent a year in Prop 36 court. So I know the program intimately. And this isn't something I'd ever expect you to know or be in the weeds about, because that's not your job. But the program actually did not function very well. And part of it was that the carrot and stick in theory, written on paper and in legislation, was just brilliant, right? Get out of custody now and just go to treatment. And the reality was that we as a system at the time would depend on the defendant to pay their own drug test. So if you had someone show up and they were actually clean after being very likely homeless and without transportation and would show up clean, we would then ask them to go out and collect cans to pay for the drug tests to see if they were clean. So the entire system and its methodology was, I think, flawed. And what we have seen change since then under the remarkable leadership of T.R. Miracle in our probation department, he really has shifted the paradigm to how do we think of public safety, right? He's coined this great phrase that he's saying, that he is calling accountability and opportunity, right? Mm-hmm. We need public safety. We need our law enforcement officers to be equipped and to handle threats to the community, but also the opportunity is the other side of that kind of justice model. So that program is near and dear to my heart because it was so brilliantly thought out and so well intended, and then in its application, because of a host of factors, it actually just did not work, did not function. It didn't move with human realities, if you will, and how people are really naturally motivated. So what we are doing now, I think, is quite remarkable with the leadership in place to think very differently and creatively about the public safety issue, and also the opportunity that should be coupled with with accountability. So that's a free one to you, TR. Very, very well done. I'm very pleased about it, and I appreciate your perspective in the paradigm shift and thinking about these issues in a very broad, creative manner. So hats off to you, Bill.
Thank you, Supervisor.
Hold on just a second. Mr. Walker, Supervisor Gleason.
Thank you, Bill. I think you're right. We need a bigger boat. You know, you have an organization. I was thinking this also when Dina was up talking. You have a very large organization, one of our larger organizations, and you have multiple divisions within that organization that are doing disparate things, and somehow they get focused in some areas around homelessness, whether they're going in one direction or another, but somehow you manage those resources and those teams to achieve an objective. And you do a very good job of it. And I remember when we first started our Lean Six Sigma effort, you were a lead cheerleader in that deal. Did you find that that effort that the county took, which isn't a solvent for all our ills, but it is a management tool to help streamline organizations and make them more effective, did you find that helpful in that sense? And how would you relate those managerial efforts to managing this big conglomerate that we're trying to wrap our hands around?
Thank you, Supervisor, through the chair, for that question. I love Lean Six. I love the methodology of it and how it allows you to attack problems and break them down and then improve them. One of the difficulties with attacking any problem this large is that it affects multiple entities. And just having brief presentations by these departments and by the Homeless Collaborative kind of makes that out. And so what I find that I do a lot of and work with the Collaborative on is how to get the right entities in the right room. When you talked about how many committees they have, it's not committeedom. They're actually trying to solve problems and make plans. And I do believe that the use of Lean Six in that kind of methodology would work very well within the structures of the Collaborative.
Do you think that, you heard the presentation this morning, brilliant presentation, very thorough, and you look from your eyes at this organization, the structure, the organizational structure of this. What do you think?
I think it's an entity that has strong roots that need to be watered more. I have a property up in the mountains, and we just put in, because of the droughts, we put in watering tubes where you dig a hole deep and then you put rocks and a tube in it so that you can water all the way down to the roots. If you just heard how much is needed out there on the streets, if you just asked the public, they would say, well, we would like to see a lot more people doing these things. When I see the plan, I think the plan is good, but it needs more water, it needs more funding, it needs the ability to have more beds. Everything they said is good, but we need a bigger boat. Lean Six can make the boat run probably a little better, but we still need a bigger boat.
I'm thinking more about the structure itself. It seems to me to be committeedom. Is that what the word you used? I don't know. It's horizontal. It's a horizontal type of organization, and it's very wide and broad. And those are good, and those perform well in certain circumstances. But talk to me a second about your perspective from a managerial perspective on managing that type of broad organization. And do you think that is the most effective, or do you think we need to shuffle it around a little bit, or how would you approach this problem?
You know, and when you address change, change itself creates its own delays. I personally don't know that I would want to change radically the structure of the Collaborative. I do think having an outcomes-based and benchmark-based deliverables becomes very, very important, especially with starting up the, like if we were going to have another meeting, I think it should be less explaining processes and more giving you data of outcomes. Right. How many people have we done this with? How many people are in treatment? What's our recidivism rate? What's our, you know, it should become a very data-driven element and very transparent in that regard. Is it right that we should fund this? Is it getting us what we need? Going back to the comment of the probation department, they have and I'm blanking on the name of it, they have a coordinated system that treats a very high-risk group, and they get great outcomes because they put it all together. The day reporting. Thank you, the day reporting center. So I think what we need to do is make sure that we have really good monitoring and outcomes, not just to the Collaborative. We all are, you know, the Collaborative isn't its own entity, it's agencies that make up the Collaborative. and that we should monitor very closely.
Yeah, I thought the presentation this morning was outstanding, and yes. I really applaud what we're doing, and I just want to critique it from a managerial perspective and not anything else. And I was going to talk at length a little later, but about measuring success. How do we measure things? If we can't measure it, we can't change it. We must be able to measure it to know that we are succeeding. And so I appreciate your comments on data. Anything else you want to talk about?
Just one thing, because you really sparked me through the chair. The comment of when law enforcement does all that work and goes out and then the person refuses the help because of a barrier, we have to address the barrier. And so one of the things that I really focus on as a manager is, well, thank you. I don't normally get that. But I really focus on the managers. You can't sit around and talk about, you can't morally discuss that problem. You have to address that problem. So if the problem is they're under the influence and they won't, you have to address the right problem. And so my perspective as a manager is the easiest way to get lean is to fix the right problems.
Interesting. Thank you, Bill. Appreciate it.
Anybody else? Supervisor Couch.
I don't know who this is for. But you've talked, you need a bigger boat, you're going to need more money, everybody's going to need more money. What is the most important data point or data points that you need? Is it the point in time count?
I think I would defer that to the collaborative people, and I'll just sit in the front in case the question's for me.
Good morning. I'm Stephen Pelz, the Executive Director of the Housing Authority County of Kern, and I think our opinion as a collaborative is the point in time count is really the measure of how we determine whether we're successful or not.
That's what I assume. So let me follow that up with a question. You do it. You're going to do it on January 30th, 2019. Is there a reason we do it when it's cold and potentially wet? And I'm thinking that may depress the count.
So you can thank our wonderful federal government of that. So they mandated the count occurs in the last 2 weeks of January each year. So we have to pick a day during the last 2 weeks of January.
Well, I appreciate Mr. Walker's suggestion that we ought to take I think what he said was we ought to take another look at Prop 47 or doing something about its impact. I think we ought to talk to the federal government about allowing us to count when it makes the most sense, when we're going to get the most accurate count. And I don't know if that's even doable, but it just makes some sense to me that you're going to have I see a lot more homeless people on the streets right now, even when it's over 100 degrees, than I do into January. Thank you.
If I could add, the other thing that we're going to be doing with our new HMIS system, which will kick in January, is we'll have the ability to actually have a more comprehensive real-time count. When we have 15 to 20 more street outreach workers, we'll really know on a day-to-day basis how many people are homeless in our community. So, thank you.
We'll come back to the Homeless Collaborative in a few moments, but let's let Mr. Gonzalez
I just have
sum up this part.
Some closing comments. There are some departments that were left out due to time constraints, and I wanted to acknowledge those departments. For example, probation, aging and adult services, animal services, employers training resource, library, planning and natural resources department, and veteran services. I know we only had 2 hours. And then I would just like to say, this concludes the presentation. Therefore, it is recommended that your board receive and file this report. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm going to next turn to the Homeless Collaborative folks who are in the front row. I'd like to hear specifically from you. You're on the front line of this with us. But do any members of the board have comments or questions for staff about what staff has presented to us so far? Supervisor Perez.
Thank you. Stephen, I assume you're going to give us some information about that, the needs you have on the folks to do the outreach in the late January. Are you going to provide more of that, or you feel good about where we are there? Or will it be addressed at some point? I just want to make sure you have the floor to discuss that fully for what you need, because you and I have had this discussion, and I think it's the most critical piece of getting a bigger boat, however you want to describe, getting our fair share of federal dollars to address an overrepresentation of indigent poor and really quite tragic social indexes in every regard. But this piece apparently is so critical. I just want to make sure we're not overlooking or just skating past it, because as I understand it in my limited expertise, that's really the building block of how we really expand and more accurately get our numbers. Stephen, Chairman, if just a moment, if you wouldn't mind.
Sure, certainly, Supervisor Perez. Actually, I'm going to defer to Jessica Jansen, our homelessness coordinator. We do need many more volunteers. We ran out of time last year.
Which meant we counted less people.
Absolutely.
Which means we get less money.
There is a correlation, particularly now at the state level, with our count and funding. So we will receive less money because we undercounted this last January.
Right.
Ms. Jansen can provide some more details about the count, though.
Thank you.
Thank you, Supervisor Perez. So talking about the point-in-time count, it is mandated by the federal government. We are stipulated within the last 2 weeks of January to perform the count. And actually, traditionally, homelessness is at its highest during those last 2 weeks, which is why the count occurs then. And it's not just us that does the count then, it's across the nation, continuums of care, collaboratives such as ours are doing the count during that time. So this year we did have a good turnout of volunteers, but in order to get a more accurate count, we absolutely need to mobilize more people because we only have 1 day and 4 hours within that 1 day to cover the 8,000 square miles of Kern County. So we definitely have to have a significant turnout of volunteers to make sure that there's some accuracy that day.
What about paid people? Couldn't we provide funding for paid people who we can hold accountable and we can train ahead of time and know are going to be available to gather that critical intel?
So as of right now, we don't have funding that provides any compensation for people. We do have our service providers who, we have our point-in-time count committee that's made up of all our service providers that deal with the recruitment of the volunteers, the training of the volunteers, and really coordinate the efforts on that day. But that day when we come out as the Kern County Homeless Collaborative and as, this big group of volunteers.
Got it. That's very helpful. Thank you, Stephen.
I'd like to brainstorm about, are there other county resources we could apply? If it's one window, 4 hours of time, should we have the fire department throughout the county be involved? Should we have a rollout of all of our staff available to, if we're cutting off our own nose by not being able to count enough people, then is there a point at which we should put more resources in there to do that? So that's a good point. Let's hear from the Homeless Collaborative. I don't know if that's Mr. Gill, Mr. Baldovinos, Mr. Pels, who that might be. Oh, Laura, sorry, Lorelei, I didn't see you there. Thank you.
Lorelei Oviant, Director of Planning and Natural Resources. I believe it was 5 years ago, the coordinator for the Homeless Collaborative, who was in charge of the count, came to me and I coordinated the renewable energy companies in Eastern Kern who sent all of their employees out for the count. They also donated handouts, little bags that they could give. I was not aware that this was not a normal thing, that they went to companies to do this, so I wasn't asked to do it again, but we should do that. We should go to our companies. They sent all of the renewable energy. First Solar actually paid for all of their employees to get trained. It was one of the years when we had the best count in Eastern Kern, and I believe that it's a model that we could use again.
Very good. Very good. Okay, thank you. Okay, Homeless Collaborative. Mr. Baldovinos, are you the current chair of the collaborative? So maybe we'd have you go first. And can you introduce yourself to the group?
Yes, Carlos Baldovinos, Executive Director at the Mission of Kern County, and also serves as the chair of the Homeless Collaborative. So what question did you have for me, Supervisor?
Well, I think your perspective on where we are with all this, there are many, many people, let's just pause for a second. There are many people here today who have a concern. I don't know if everybody wants to speak. We allotted a couple of hours to this. Clearly, this is bigger than a couple of hours. So I want to hear some input from you. I want to hear some input from some of the public, but I think with my colleagues' indulgence, we'll need to come back another time to make sure that we fully embrace this because and I'm sure you all have, I have observations from my district that I want to make sure that we get on the table. But for now, let's have you give us some feel for where you are with it.
Well, it is a daunting task. I actually I've been the chairman now for about 3 years, and it's something that as I see the members today report, Heather Kimmel and Jessica Jansen, I mean, these are real issues that are affecting our community. I especially see it in my shelter and our programs that we run at the Mission of Kern County. We are full to capacity every single night. we're pulling out roll-away beds, and we just don't have enough room. So there is a need, supervisors, to do more for this community. There's so many things we could do as far as low-barrier shelters. That's something that isn't a 10-year plan. There's lack of affordable housing, as you have seen. There's a women's shelter, the unaccompanied women shelter that we need to support the Bakersfield Homeless Center in. There is the outreach component that we're tackling, and that there's going to be some work that's going to be happening in the days ahead. But it is a daunting task. It is not easy. People come to us, to many of our facilities with a lot of needs, a lot of mental disabilities, a lot of substance abuse. There's just so much need out there that as a collaborative, we're trying to engage each and every day. And these women gave you such a wonderful report. Yes, there's a 10-year plan, but there's wonderful work that is happening today. And yeah, I mean, I just see it. I mean, I know that as soon as I leave this meeting, I'm going to be faced with a lot of issues that happened over the weekend at the mission. And we try to address those, but that's every single one of our partners is doing this day in and day out. And I just couldn't be prouder of the group that I'm working with, such as the collaborative, 26 members that are dedicated to the work. And I applaud them. I would ask you to applaud them as well, because these folks, a lot of times, are putting in some extra overtime on what is happening. This community, I'm not from Bakersfield. I'm not from the Kern County area. I'm originally from the Midwest, but I've never, ever seen the good work, the good deeds that are going on in this community. It's a beautiful sight to see day in and day out how people just come and want to get involved. And this is something that we're pressed with. And I do think that as a collaborative, as a community, we can address these things. I believe this is step one of many steps ahead, and that we can tackle this and eradicate homelessness. It may take us 10 years, it may take us a lot sooner, but I know that as a collaborative, with all the partners, with you folks, as our elected officials, we can get a lot of this done, and the community support, we can accomplish so much in this community. Thank you, Supervisor.
Thank you, Mr. Baldovinos. Appreciate that. I serve on the Community Action Partnership of Kern, which is an umbrella organization that provides many resources to the needy in our community. And Jeremy Tobias is here, I believe. Jeremy, could you come forward and tell us just for a moment what Community Action Partnership of Kern, the shorthand name for it is CAPK, what CAPK is doing, and the effort you have to develop this resource in our community?
Good morning, Chairman, fellow board members. I'm Jeremy Tobias, CEO of Community Action Partnership of Kern. As many of you know, we have decades of experience and capacity in serving Kern County's low-income communities. We do not provide direct homeless services today, but we're willing to bring our boat. So we have a fairly big boat, and we're trying to help out. So I had some details here, which many of the staff have already talked about, but we've applied for 2 funding opportunities that we're going after. One is the coordinated entry program to the Homeless Collaborative. We've applied for that, and we're looking forward to coordinating that service provider here for the whole county. What that'll do is to bring efficiency and effectiveness. We talked about that a little bit today, to the services. It won't put any additional shoes on the ground, but it'll bring effectiveness and efficiency to the services they have today. The other item we've applied for is an RFP through County Behavioral Health and Recovery Services. You heard Mr. Walker talk about that. We've applied for a street outreach engagement and linkages for homeless in the greater Bakersfield area. That'll do a few different things. It'll provide a team of case managers, put some shoes on the ground. Mr. Walker mentioned that. We're also looking at providing a day center, drop-in center for homelessness with some of that funding if we're awarded. And what that would do is offer a key component. Key 2 components would be meeting homelessness where they are to make sure they're getting into the services they need, and also taking care of the special needs we talked about. The homeless, they have animals. That a lot of times that's their family, and you cannot get them into services if they have pets or companion animals. Sometimes they're called. If they can't bring those with them, they are not going to go into services. You're not going to get them in there. also their possessions, making sure that they can bring their possessions with them. So that's a real quick summary. I didn't want to take up too much time because I know the public wants to speak, but we're here. We're ready to help. We're ready to step up where needed. We're willing to bring our boat along. Like I said, we have a fairly good-sized boat, and we're looking forward to entering the service provider category. We are on the Homeless Collaborative. We're an active participant with some of the ancillary services we provide, such as the food bank and 211. And 211 would be the basis of that coordinated entry program that we've applied through the Homeless Collaborative. We think they're doing great work, and we're happy to join in and help where we can. Thank you.
Thank you. Colleagues, my thought is that we go a little bit longer. We said that we would meet from 10 to 12. Are you okay if I open up the public to speak to us for about 30 minutes, and then at the end of that 30 minutes, if we I have a hunch we're not going to be anywhere near having heard from everybody after 30 minutes, that we reschedule another time to come back, because thinking this was from 10 to 12, we have a whole day of activities that's being pent up here. Is that okay with everybody if we go until 12:30? It's Supervisor Couch.
I just need to let you know that because of the scheduling, I made an appointment for 12:30, so I've got to step out, but yeah. I'm happy to come back.
Yeah, we have to wrap it up at 12:30 because we have a number of us have other things we have to do after that. But I think the public is interested in, just by your being here, we need to do this again, and we will schedule another time for that. So, Madam Clerk, could you please set the clock for 30 minutes, and let's begin to hear from people. Be as efficient as you can with your comments, and we look forward to the public's input, obviously. Please lead us off, Mr. Turnipseed. And when you come forward, please give us your name for the record, then you can proceed. Mr. Turnipseed.
Members of the board, and I'll be very efficient with your time. Mr. Walker stole much of my attitude, but the real questions you need to address when you come back. There are 16 agencies, 16 different boards, 16 different perspectives and responsibilities trying to collaborate into one organization. No one has talked about what's the total amount going to be? How much money is it going to take for this 10-year plan to address the problems we have? There's no benchmarks, there's no measurable outcomes. How can we judge the success of this collaborative if there aren't those goals and objectives? And I think we need to come back with is the budget, how much of it's going to be local money, and how much is going to be state and federal grants to address this. This is a nice little starting point, but it's far from a plan without measurable outcomes.
Sure.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Please feel free to come forward and step up.
Good morning. I'm Dennis Fox. How are you guys doing? Okay. I have been here previously nagging about a few things. Are we dealing here with cause or effects? I see it as kind of an effect from the fact that Henry Ford got replaced by Jack Welch. Not bubble up, it's now trickle down. And we have waste people, used to be called. And there are people, one thing you should look at is the people who are against having affordable housing. They've come here before, they've sued the city, you people might remember, for people daring to live by their houses. Also, the thing is the forest, the lumber, which I'd like to see thinned. No, we want to clear-cut Brazil, but now generally, it used to be that didn't cost much. Now, with the trade wars, it may have an effect. The thing that we might think about, three things, and they're Band-Aids, but I'm not going to get into it too much. First one is the cost of the housing, which I just talked about, and the boarded up abandoned houses and the squatters, which are being sold to insurance companies eventually. And that can be done by adverse possession. It's a legal term. It's an incentive to get that house straightened out, or it goes and you replace the squatters with owners. And I think that is something that's really a neat one. It's being done in the Bay Area. The second one, trimmigrants. the people who migrate around trimming marijuana, they are a permanent criminal underclass, and there's also affect the people they're selling to, who are unemployable. And that should be, the sheriff does not want to get into that. Perhaps probation might be a better one to go with. Third, I want to talk about, well, the encampments. If you're going to give them showers, you should also wash the dogs and the pets. You should take care of all the stuff that's in the shopping cart. That has been missed in other places. And the county ag should be involved a little bit for entomology reasons that have affected the library with the daytime homeless shelter. The mentally ill would be the last one. Several years ago, it was thought, well, if we can get them to take their meds, then they'll be okay. Well, if they were the type that could take their meds, they wouldn't have to be in the facilities. Closing the facilities, and they dumped them onto you. They became a state-wide problem, has become a county problem. And not only did that up there, it has happened that other states started giving Greyhound therapy, putting people and shipping them here. And that is maybe we should threaten to send them back. That would get the attention, and maybe the state will at least get back and do what it should be doing. Thank you.
Please come forward.
I don't know whether to say good morning or good afternoon or good evening or goodbye. I'm not sure, but hello.
Hello.
I'm homeless. Look at me. The dregs. I'm kidding. I am homeless. And I didn't even know where to start, except that I was overwhelmed by the amount of funds that are going to be utilized for people like me. I just want to tell you, about 10 days ago, I arrived fresh out of Lerdo jail, where I'd been residing for a year in isolation. And I took up writing before because I was like, well, someday they're going to have to let me out, so what shall I do? Well, I took up a writing campaign because I really had no access to the phones, and when I did access the phones, there was a 34-cent a minute price tag on it, which is valuable, but however, most of the agencies that you call are 800 numbers, and you're not allowed to call those numbers. And then you have to be recorded. So there's a lot of putting people away, and this is, and watch out for the term here, but this is a human trafficking system. This is transportation. From your house to the store and back, and what's the best way to deal with me? Anyway, I just want to say the Kern County Collaborative. I couldn't get addresses. I was, law library. Okay, right to the law library. Here's your address for the Kern County Collaborative. You got 2 letters from me. Came right back, returned to sender. I couldn't get you. You're huge. Yeah, PowerPoint me in the direction. Just let me tell you, Habitat for Humanity, could you help me with my house? You spent $10,000 to open a sober house. I think the repairs on my house would have been less than $3,000. I'm just guessing. That's before the deterioration from the weather and my inability to get back there due to the fact that I'm not allowed to sit on the sidewalk. Don't sit, by the way, hobos, we need shade. Anybody needs shade.
Ma'am, can you direct your comments up here so we can hear you?
That's all right. Oh, I'm sorry. You're right. The microphone. But everybody tells me I'm loud, so I just suspected everybody heard me. But anywho, I just want to describe to you that I made every effort to speak out from that tiny little cell where once in a while I was let out for the phone for the shower. I want to talk about disease. When you got in that shower, you weren't sure which way it was going, whether it was coming on you or, you were taking it off. Very, very sick in there. And I'm just going to quickly tell you how sick it was, because I'm sure that's the next question, right? How sick was it? It was so sick that people were screaming all night, bang, bang, bang on the doors, urine and feces being washed out, and the guards, what's that? Well, that's something I don't want to step in, but you know what? Now, I got the grand jury report, and I found out how much it cost to house me for that year. $36,000 for housing in Laredo. $100 a day, approximately. Let's just go with that. It's easy for stupid people like me. $100 a day, and I'm just looking at the housing that I'm dealing with now. I could have been in a hotel with room service. Not a great hotel, but, I'm not looking for much. So anyway, but what got me there? How did I get to be homeless? See, I believe in looking at the actual root cause and creating a solution from that point up, not to trickle, as you said, to command the posts and all of those goals is going to cost a lot of money for the people and the staffing. I want to tell you, who's going to clean up the garbage around this hobo? I'm going to tell you that one of the things that I suggested before I left is that I would have liked to engage being an advocate at the jail. But due to the fact that there was no mechanism, when I went to court, there was no mechanism. They wanted to tell me if I was guilty or not guilty. I said, I just want to find a solution. Because if you tell me either of those, that doesn't create the solution. I don't want off the hook. I'm on the hook, the sinker, the line. I'm the thinker. I think beyond these things. So I'm in there, and I'm trying to get in touch with, somebody. Habitat Humanity. They teased me and sent me it looked like it was all groovy, and I was applying for something. I was like, is this the same as what I need? Does this fit? I never heard back. Wrote twice to say, do you remember me? At the end of my stay, and I'm coming back tomorrow to discuss Laredo and the grand jury report, but for right now, let's just go with the homeless situation. I leave. My house is still unlivable and dilapidated, although it was my home. In my workplace since 2003, but I came home 2014 to find somebody living in it after I made a trip, and Kern County sheriffs decided I rented it. Let me just express to you my outrage that still persists, that there was no contract, no exchange of funds, and by golly, all my stuff was in there. And I had my parrot and my dog in the car, and we needed to come in. And this woman, she was duped. She wasn't all there, but you know what? She came to my aid because law enforcement was throwing me off my property. And she said, come on in. I said, look at my dogs, my bird. That's my stuff's in there. And from that point on, here we are. So,
Ma'am, we have many people who want to speak this morning.
I'm sure you do, and I just want to finish up because I'm coming back tomorrow, and I want to leave it off with, kind of a select portion. I come out of jail. I'm like, where am I going? Any law enforcement outreach? No. Mental health? Sure, we'll take you for the night and get out. Yeah, we can take you here and drop you off. I got a bank. Where do I go? How much do I pay? We don't know. Pretty scary. considering all I heard here, we don't do that or whatever. So I'm paying for a little roach motel, which is fine. The roaches only want my food. I'll talk to you tomorrow. I'm gonna kill it.
Who would be next?
Sorry, I'm going to make this quick. Good morning, gentlemen and lady and gentlemen of the board. My name is Joey Pasillas. I want to appreciate all the initiatives that are coming out to assess the situation. I want to appreciate our law enforcement and also our fire department coming together and assessing the situation. I want to appreciate the county for coming together to serve this community, for the community and for the country. I was in the United States Marine Corps for 4 years. I was homeless myself about a month ago. Thanks to the California Veterans Assistance Foundation, I had found myself a home. Also, now I'm back in law school. I'm going to law school. I also found a job. I'm working. Also, all my issues have been resolved. I'm actually working with the behavioral health, the behavioral health initiative that they got going on back there. All these initiatives are working. I just want to let you know that this is working and that all the funds that are going are not going in vain. This is working, and I do believe in the system, and I really want you guys to keep trying as hard as you can, and that this is very effective, that all you guys are doing, the Mission County Court problems. I do believe the addiction is really something that we should be focused on right now, and then also trying to get our community to be more voluntary and focused and voluntary, and getting our volunteers in school, getting more volunteers out there, because if we use this in our system for the youth, they're going to be able to volunteer and see exactly how it is to be going out there. We know we don't want our children to be seeing the things that are being seen right now. We want a nice, aesthetically pleasing community for us and for our community together. I know these issues can be resolved, and I know it's a very, very daunting task given the crimes and the cost that it is for being homeless. I do believe the litigation between the homelessness and the community, and then also all of our communities, corporations that are going around, will be an effect to our community as a whole. So I want to thank you again for everything that you guys are doing. I do believe that this is a working initiative, and I do appreciate you for taking the time and consideration to assess this problem. My name is Joey Pasillas, Prior Marines, veterans. Thank you for our veterans. Thank you for our service. Thank you for you guys, and I do appreciate you guys for everything. I did a lot of volunteer work with also Jana too as well. And then for Gleaners, I want to appreciate Gleaners. I want to appreciate everybody that is putting their hands into this from their heart, not just from anything else. Thank you again. My name is Joey Pasillas.
Would you like to come forward?
I just have a quick question.
Can you give us your name for the record, please?
Oh, sure. My name is Jennifer Clayton, and I live in the Oleander neighborhood. So I'm in one of the neighborhoods that's near downtown, and we're affected a lot by the homeless population. And one of the biggest things that we hear is people get angry. You know, they're leaving crap in the alleys. There's all sorts of issues. And the running theme that a lot of us are saying is, well, homelessness isn't a crime. So if people aren't doing something wrong, you can't really call the police. The police aren't going to come to move somebody just because they're walking down your street. But what do you guys plan to do as far as getting us involved? That's something that would make a big difference. I know in our neighborhood, we've had a lot of like neighborhood watch meetings, and we've done a lot of like walks through the neighborhood to clean up the area. But the biggest thing that we have a problem with as far as the homeless population is our park is unusable. Beale Park is a nightmare. I have 15-year-old twins that I can't send to the park at 15 because I'm afraid of what they'll run into. We have people trying to sleep on our porches. We have people in our alleyways. And when we call, the response is very slow, and it's just kind of move along. But how are we going to be approached to help you in help solving this problem? I know there's people that aren't going to want help. and we understand that. And I also understand that a lot of the crime that happens on our area is not from the homeless population, it's from people that have homes. The people don't steal stuff off my porch and take it to the park. They steal it off my porch and they take it to their homes. So it's a bigger issue. And one of the things that you may want to consider is making sure that you get community involvement. I didn't know about this, someone posted it. And social media. So using those things, using us that work as community leaders and work in our neighborhoods to kind of communicate with the people that see this every day, may be a really good direction to go in. And that's all I wanted.
Good suggestion. Thank you very much.
Thanks.
Hello, my name is Betty Peoples, and I want to address the homeless issue. I've been in this town for 34 years, and I've worked, and my problem here is getting a place to stay. In June, my apartment burned down. And what happened here is I retired, and now I don't fit any requirements for getting an apartment. Like, say for instance, you got to have 3 times the rent. That's my complaint. You go to rent a place, and say I get $1,200 and you're paying $500 a month, that's $1,500, okay? How do I get that kind of money, for replacement? When I became homeless, I had 2 brothers that, I was driving truck. So I had 2 brothers that are homeless. I let them stay in my place. Now my apartment burned down. I can't find them a place to stay, and I can't find me a place to stay. So what I want to know is, what do you guys do to address that? I've got so much disinformation. I've been homeless for 3 months. I've been sleeping in my car, and I'm retired, okay? I work all my time, try to be a good citizen, but it's just hard to get in a place. And I can understand why so many people are homeless here. I didn't fill out numerous applications. The first thing they tell me is, you don't fit the requirements for renting a place. And I'm thinking, how the hell am I going to, excuse my expression, how am I going to afford a place if I'm retired and I don't make 3 times the rent? I make $1,200, and they want $1,500 or $1,600. So what are you guys going to do to address the landlords or the property owners that are stopping a lot of people that can afford the rent, but they can't get in because they don't have that money?
Well, appreciate you coming forward, ma'am. We will note your question to see if we can find some answers.
I appreciate it.
Thank you. Who would be next? So there's 9.5 minutes, so try to be as succinct as you can, please.
I will, thank you. My name is Larry Lang, Chairman Maggard, Board. I own a business just off North Chester, along the river. My business relies on the riverbed in part. I teach children how to ride horses, and I use the river as part of my classroom. I am registered with the Department of Justice. I'm fingerprinted, but yet I have daily interactions with drug abusers, parolees, with sex offenders. My students come into contact with naked people, with drugs, with trash, with graffiti, with addicts fighting, what we like to call tweaker love. We have people out there, when they communicate and they just yell and scream and cuss, and I'm bringing children along, and we have to tell them, hey, could you keep it down? Just last Thursday, I was walking a 5-year-old on a horse. People were fighting behind us. The horse turned around to see, hey, what's going on back there? And the 5-year-old fell off a horse, broke her helmet. Luckily, we required them to wear a helmet. Had she not been wearing the helmet, she probably would have been in the hospital. My second business is a boarding stable. And as part, I'm representing the equestrian community here today. The river access is a selling point for my business. And it is not safe for single people to go out on the river. A couple months ago, one of my boarders went out on the river. Pretty funny story, unless you think about it. Was literally attacked by a 6-foot bunny rabbit. Hiding in the bush, 6-foot Easter bunny rabbit, big Easter bunny head, came out and attacked him. Luckily, my boarder is a Green Beret. Luckily, my boarder was on a mule who has a really bad attitude. The mule proceeded to attack the giant bunny rabbit. My boarder got away from him and kicked him. Had my boarder been a female, which I have several boarders that are females that go out on that river alone, we would be having quite a bit different conversation. This wouldn't be such a funny story. I realize that everybody has a right to sleep, and everybody needs a place to sleep. But nobody has a right to make drugs on the river. Nobody has a right to use drugs on the river. Nobody has a right to bring trash into the river and leave it. Nobody has a right to dump toxic waste into our wetlands. And nobody has a right to burn down somebody's business and burn down somebody's home and kill somebody's horses. As I leave this, I'd like to ask you what we can do as the Equestrian community to help you out. We'll certainly be in touch and talking about the count on January 30th. There's a lot of us, and we're pretty mobile. And in finishing, thank you.
Thank you. I appreciate you bringing the river to our attention today. If you walk along the north bank of the river through the greater Bakersfield area, you will be shocked at how it has become. That's one of the intolerable circumstances that we will deal with. Yes, sir. Please give us your name and proceed.
My name is Mohammed Guraya, and I am a real estate broker for last few years. And I have office on Stockdale Highway. This is my real frustration. This is not jokes or funny stories, but this is the real thing. Many times, almost a couple of every month, every week, the people are sitting in front of my office. And last week, the guy came I came just for other reason to my office. 7 o'clock, the same guy is sitting and charging his phone and all the trash around in front of my office. Then I came in the evening after 5 o'clock. He thought I won't be coming back again. The same guy was there. And the sheriff department, they are doing very good job, but every time they come, there are two people, they are wasting their time, and I mean, they are trying to help, but the same guy is coming again and again. So I think this, which I read in the newspaper this Saturday, there are 20, even today here, 26 agencies. I don't know what they are doing. And this problem is the same. Maybe I can suggest myself, maybe there are better brains everywhere. Maybe make another unit of safety or police, only consider and take care of the homeless. They pick them up, then put someplace which is already, you square them, and they should not be coming every day, wasting sheriff department's, the manpower, and giving the trouble to the people too, especially for the businesses. I think that's all I want to say. And at the same time, I think differently too. When people come from wars, like for example, from Afghanistan or from Iraq, those people should be taken care of right way on the airport. Because those people, when they come, their homes are gone, their children are gone, their wife is living someplace else. So keep track of those people also. Even they have a veterans department, but I think I don't know how much they do. If the 26 agencies cannot take care of, make it one safe, homeless safety police or something. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Goraya. Okay, there are 5 people in line. We're going to have each of you guys take 2 minutes apiece, so we're going to limit to 2 minutes apiece, and then we'll be done for today. We'll come back and meet another time. Yeah, 2 minutes. Thank you. Hi, Ben. Please give us your name.
With Church Without Walls, and we work on Beardsley in Oildale for 15 years now. And I agree with all the things everybody's been saying. My question is, because I work with them all the time, I work with flood and helping them get into housing and stuff. They don't want help. They don't want homes. I break my head off against the wall all the time trying to find out what we're going to do with those that don't want help, those who don't want to go through the system. So that's where I'm at right now with a lot of people I work with, which are supposed to be the homeless. What do we do with the ones that don't want help?
Thank you, Ben. We will try to find some solutions to that. Good morning. Please give us your name.
How you doing? My name's Chad Garcia. I've came here, I spoke to you about post-traumatic stress, suicide, and a few other issues. What I've heard today, kind of echoing a few times, is the topic of addiction. And I don't think we can have this conversation about homelessness without fully talking about what we're going to do as a community about addiction. My Marine brother over there, I'm an Army vet. How you doing, brother? He spoke about his addiction. We have a problem on our streets with a lot of people in addiction. So I think this is kind of a two-part conversation. We need to come together and deal with this issue because it's a serious problem. I worked at Home Depot for a couple months, ran across homeless people using drugs all the time, leaving their needles behind in the parking lot, and we had to go clean up. These are children in vans while their parents are going inside Home Depot looking at this. You know, this past weekend I had kind of a bad weekend myself, dealing with post-traumatic stress and just issues I have going on. I thought maybe I'd go to the mountains, kind of get some shut-eye under the stars, get myself away from the environment a little bit. And then I realized I was kind of silly because I have a home, I have a family. And the reason I have a home still, and the reason I have a family, is because I overcame my addiction. I'm 3 years sober as of 2 weeks ago, and I chose my family. Thank you. But I chose my family and my community over my addiction and my selfishness. And I understand, just like the commander said, and a lot of people here, that a lot of people don't want to be helped. So how do we as a community inspire people to want to help themselves? And that's how I think we tackle a huge part of this problem with homelessness. Thank you very much. Have a good day.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Hello, I'm Marty Sharples. I'm with the Income Property Association of Kern and also the Housing Authority of County of Kern. Do we have any landlords here? A few of you? Any real estate professionals? Fantastic. I'd like to invite you to our first annual California Landlord Summit on Homelessness on October the 16th. It's from 8 to 2 from the Doubletree Hotel. The Income Property Association, in cooperation with the United Way, Housing Authority, and the California Apartment Association, we're going to get landlords, realtors, the people that are to provide the housing together so they can understand what the problems are and how to help with this solution. So I'd like to invite everybody to that event. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, sir. Please come forward.
Hi, my name's Scott Tillery. I'm a business owner here in Bakersfield. I have been for about 13 years. I've noticed the huge escalation of homelessness, and with that, also the drug use that comes along with it. Last December, my ex-wife was a part of the opiate epidemic. She was not killed by the drugs in December, but rather she was in a vacant house trying to stay warm, I believe. It burnt down. She died of smoke inhalation. My oldest son didn't shed a tear because he saw the oncoming events with the opiates she was taking. He's 17-year-old. He's a perfect person. And through the efforts of his family, including myself, trying to preserve good ethics within him, I think he'll be fine. But I think that's one of the things that we still need to instill is just really good ethics. I think everyone has to do their part from the get-go. We've got kids being raised without fathers oftentimes that don't get instilled great ethics, and that is posing problems with kids that don't have work ethic. They don't know that drugs are probably a bad choice, or they're not being reminded enough by the father in the household. With this same woman, I'll state that I fought for custody and became a stable figure in my son's life, no matter what the cost. It was tough as a parent that was ousted for no other reason than my ex-wife wanted to put up the fight. In the end, I'm winning, but not the way I wanted to. So let's get back to the root. Let's start raising our kids as families and trying to do our best part as the society. We shouldn't have to rely on all these great services you guys are providing. We should start at the root as good parents and providers and good people. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Tillery. Good
Hello,
morning,
my name
sir.
is Perry Ortiz, and everybody addressed pretty much what I wanted to address, but one thing they didn't is the recycle centers. If you want to kill a neighborhood, put a recycle center in it. It brings drugs, trash, that's where they hang out, that's where they strip and they take their stuff to. So just keep in mind about the recycle centers. It lowers the property values. Just look around and you'll see what I'm talking about. Thank you.
I agree, sir. Okay, we're grateful for all of you who've come today to share with us. We will have other forums like this and offer more opportunities for the public to be here. We'll kind of shift a little bit and maybe de-emphasize reports a little bit more and more emphasize public input. So we thank you very much for being here this morning and look forward to meeting with you again. Okay, that'll conclude our hearing on this matter. Are there any members of the public that want to talk to us about any item that's not on our agenda? I don't see one, so we will reconvene tomorrow morning at 9 a.m. Thank you very much. May I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Without objection, so ordered. Thank you.